well, yes, it's still good morning. I have a few minutes to spare. Yes, good morning, everyone. Thank you so much just for the opportunity to be able to come and share with you all. I hope by the end of this that you will feel inspired and encouraged by the difference that Moneymore is making in the lives of those affected by leprosy, because I am here first and foremost to say thank you for everything that you are doing, and maybe along the way you will also learn a wee bit more about leprosy and the impact that you are having. But I want to bring your attention to the picture on the screen, and you can think to yourself, what first comes to your head when you see this picture? Because I know I look at this picture and I say, isn't that beautiful? God's creation, God's glory. Whereas my husband would look at this picture and he would probably say, let's get our hiking boots on and let's go explore, which most definitely is not me. I am more a lounging at the beach kind of holiday, whereas he is a hiking, cycling and exploring kind of person. But this picture is taken from one of our hospitals in Nepal. It's called an Andaman hospital, and this is its beautiful view, and it's actually tucked in the shadows of Mount Everest. And I thought, well, let's do a wee bit of digging, let's learn a wee bit about Mount Everest. And I find it so interesting that at one point in history, at one point in time, the thought of conquering and climbing Mount Everest was just wishful thinking. It was something that many people had tried and attempted to do, but it seemed impossible. But many of you in the room will probably know who the first person to climb Mount Everest was, Edmund Hillary, and he did that in 1953. He scaled the 8,800 metres that is Mount Everest, and it really shows that I am not a hiker, because when I read that I thought that doesn't sound that high. But when you compare it to somewhere like Slieve Donard at only 850 metres tall, it is definitely a hike. But at that moment in time, suddenly something that seemed impossible became possible in our world. And when I thought and reflected on this, isn't every new achievement or every path that has never been ventured, it will always face disbelief and doubt in those early stages. And it really reminded me of what the Leprosy Mission is trying to achieve, because this hospital, an Andaman and others like it across our projects, are trying to do something that many would deem impossible. And that is seeing an end to leprosy once and for all. And we'll get to that a wee bit later in the talk, but I am here to share with you the incredible news that actually this is possible, and it's possible in our lifetime, which is so exciting. Now, I'm always conscious that if you don't know about the Leprosy Mission or about what we do, you may be thinking and sitting in your seat going, leprosy? Really? Is that still an issue in our world today? I think as Christians or people who attend church, it can be so easy to read our Bibles, to hear the stories of Jesus healing people with leprosy and think, surely that's been sorted by now. Surely that is a thing of the past. But unfortunately, that is simply not the case. Because we heard earlier, there's about 250,000 newly diagnosed cases of leprosy every single year, with 10% of those cases found in children. That means that every 2 minutes, someone in our world hears the words, "You have leprosy." That might be a really short sentence. It's only made up of 3 words, but actually with it comes the weight of thousands of years worth of stigma, shame, and fear. Now, leprosy as a disease is often linked to poverty. It is affecting the poorest of the poor in our world. It is thriving in those areas where poor nutrition, overcrowding, shared wash facilities, all of these factors are naturally lowering people's immune systems, and that is making them more susceptible to catching the leprosy disease. Now, it works really slowly at the start, almost indetectable. And those early symptoms will start with maybe light patches on the skin that are numb to touch. It'll progress by shortening the muscles and the tendons in the hands and feet, and that is what leaves people with clawed-like hands as those muscles and tendons contract and shorten. The same with the legs and the feet. That contraction and shortening will leave people with drop foot, the inability to lower and raise their foot. Leprosy then starts to attack the nervous system in the hands, feet, and face. And now that leaves someone with no ability to feel pain anymore. And on a surface level, that sounds great, doesn't it? I am a really clumsy person. I could probably show you scars and burn marks on my hands where I can't manage to cook a meal without doing something to myself accidentally. Wouldn't it be great not to be able to feel that? But when we start to unpack that and dig a wee bit deeper, I like to see pain as our body's little alarm system. It's the thing going off in our body, those red lights, sirens going, saying actually you need to stop doing what you're doing because it's causing damage and hurt to your body. So without that little alarm system, that cut on your hand or that cut on the sole of your foot goes unnoticed. It'll get infected, it'll turn to an ulcer, and then eventually that will lead to permanent, irreversible disability, and actually unnecessary disability, because this should not be the case for a curable disease. And I know hearing leprosy is curable is often a surprise to people, but actually it's as simple as 3 different antibiotics all working together to fight the leprosy disease. And just when you think that leprosy can't take any more from an individual, actually it does, because it causes more hurt and more pain through stigma and discrimination, because actually often it is just like biblical times where people are excluded, where people affected by leprosy are pushed out of their communities or abandoned by their families. It is heartbreaking to hear that often they live isolated and lonely lives. There are even laws in our world which prevent people affected by leprosy having certain jobs, from marrying certain people, their basic right to health care, even their access to public transport. So we can start to see this bigger picture that actually leprosy is so much more than just a disease. Leprosy is an injustice in our world that needs to be stopped. And this is exactly what projects and hospitals, like the one I mentioned at the start in Andaban, are trying to achieve. But actually, they desperately need your continued help and your continued support. I showed you that lovely view, and Andaban is at the top of very high hills with that beautiful view. And often we like to think of it like a lighthouse. It's up high for everyone to see, and actually it's a beacon of hope and light, because people look up to it knowing that they will find refuge and they will find care within its walls when they are rejected and pushed aside in so many other places. And now Kashi is just one person who has most definitely felt the warmth and the love of Anandaban, and in fact it's his home. Kashi lives within the hospital grounds, and leprosy tried to stifle his life and his potential, because from a really young age Kashi felt the cruelty and the suffering and the stigma that leprosy brings. Because even though he was just a child when he was diagnosed, people were so afraid of him in his village that he was forced to live in a cattle shelter, because people were afraid that he would give them leprosy. He wasn't allowed to go to school. He wasn't allowed to play with other children. Suddenly, those enjoyable childhood years were turned into abandonment, neglect, and loneliness. And now finally Kashi heard about Anandaban, this beacon of hope and light, and he went to the hospital for treatment. But I'm going to let Kashi share a wee bit about his story and his journey himself, and we'll have a wee video where he should be able to share that with you.
I was a leprosy patient in the past. I think I was around 7 years old when I developed leprosy, but I didn't know it back then. I was diagnosed when I was 11 years old. Then I started coming to Anandaban Hospital for treatment. I wanted to work with patients. I felt it so deeply that I started working here. My day begins and ends with the hospital. I take care of the patients and dress their wounds. There are also a few patients who can't shave or bathe, so I help them. I share my experience with the patients here. After getting leprosy, your limbs can become numb, so patients must practice self-care. They should always wear shoes, never go near a fire, and while working with hard objects, they must always wrap their hands with a towel or bandage. If they take precautions, they can live a normal life. We too can have a life that is like anyone else.
Every time I see that video, I always think, how inspiring is it that Kashi became a nurse so that he could show the same love, the same compassion that he was shown, so that he could do that for others. And actually, he didn't let leprosy stand in his way. He didn't let the obstacles and the mountains that were before him, when so many others would have told him, you will amount to nothing, you will achieve nothing. But actually, Kashi didn't let that stand in his way. And now he is a beacon of hope and light for others. He can share from his experience, he can relate to patients on a level that many others won't be able to. He is now known as Uncle Kashi on the wards because of the care and love that he has for others. He is seen as a member of the family, and his cheery smile means that actually people cannot help but unload their burdens to him, knowing that they know exactly how they feel. But as people look up to Anandaban, actually it is our hope and our prayer that they see so much more than just a building. We read earlier, I lift my eyes to the mountains. Where does my help come from? My help comes from the Lord, the maker of heaven and earth. God is at the center of everything that we do. It is our prayer that through the actions of our staff, through the prayer meetings in our hospitals, through your prayers, that actually those affected would see Jesus, that they see the hope that he has to offer. We saw earlier on the slide that actually this psalm is part of a group called the Songs of Ascent, and this one in particular was given to travellers on a journey. Many, when they were doing a pilgrimage maybe to Jerusalem, they were given this prayer, this psalm for their journey. It was to reassure and give confidence that actually God is with you on your journey. He is your watcher, he is your keeper. And now in Hebrew, those words are all the same. It's the word shamar. It's used 6 times in total in this psalm. So often in Hebrew and in our Bible, repetition means, have you got the picture yet? Are you getting the idea that actually the Lord is your keeper? He protects you through all stages, all possibilities, and all circumstances, now and forevermore. When you're asleep, God is there. When you encounter challenges, God is there. And now I would love everyone in the room to hear that that doesn't just apply to the Leprosy Mission and our journey, that is for you, that is over you and your journey, wherever you are in your journey of faith. God, this God, the maker of heaven and earth, is the God that is with individuals like you, the God that is over individuals like Kashi, but actually it's the same God that is over the heavens and the earth. He is the same God that is over the big issues in our world. He is the God that is over that journey that's still to come, that we have no idea what the next steps are, but actually God is there and he has paved that way forward. And that gives us, the Leprosy Mission, so much reassurance and so much confidence, because we do have a mountainous task in front of us. I alluded to it earlier, but I want to unpack it a wee bit more for us, because the Leprosy Mission is trying to see an end to leprosy. And that isn't just a big, impressive thing that the person at the front looks great saying. Actually, we want to see zero transmission of leprosy by 2035. Isn't it amazing to think that a world without leprosy is on the horizon? Isn't it amazing to think I could be a part of that? How amazing would it be in years to come for you all to sit here and celebrate and say, Moneymore was a part of that. Moneymore was a part of ending leprosy, a disease that has caused so much hurt and so much pain in our world for thousands of years. But actually, I was a part of that, and I did it for God's glory and the building of his kingdom here on earth. How amazing would it be to play your part in that? The Leprosy Mission, we're celebrating a really big birthday this year. We're 150 years old. We look great for our age, don't we? But actually, we have been looking back and seeing God's faithfulness and God's hand in this journey over 150 years. He has been our watcher. He has been our keeper. The mission started from really humble beginnings. An Irishman based just outside Dublin and his wife. And actually they could simply not ignore leprosy when they stumbled across it in India. And really humble beginnings. They went, they saw, they served. But actually, due to ill health, they had to come back to Dublin. But little did they know that that was all part of God's plan, because he had so much bigger things in store for them. And I really hope my talk was as gripping as Wellesley Bailey's when he came back from India, because actually people queued to hear his stories and him sharing about his travels in India. And they set themselves the really humble target of £30 to raise in those first few years back in the 1870s. But actually they far exceeded that. And they raised a total of £600, which is about the equivalent to over £56,000 in today's money. And they wanted to use that money to help support people affected by leprosy. And from there, the mission was born, from those really humble beginnings. And I often think, I wonder what Wellesley Bailey is thinking now. That actually, could he ever think or imagine the journey over 150 years that God used such an ordinary, everyday person to do incredible things? But at this really key time, we can't simply look back. We need to keep looking forward to the things that still need to be achieved. And we need to ask ourselves, how can God use me to do extraordinary things in the lives of those affected by leprosy? To stick with the Everest theme, you may recognise this quote from Edmund Hillary, and it reads, "People do not decide to become extraordinary. They decide to accomplish extraordinary things." God is our shamar, and you are our valued companions on this journey to end leprosy. And with a bit of creative license, I would love to tweak that quote slightly and say God uses us and enables us to accomplish extraordinary things for His glory. Achieving this mission to end leprosy wouldn't be possible without your faithful prayers, without your faithful support and contributions in whatever form that it takes. So what does that look like in practice? Well, it could be through prayer. My help comes from the Lord. Will you continue to pray for an end to leprosy, to pray for leprosy affected people, and pray for our teams on the ground? It could be through a gift. Did you know that it only costs £24 to find and cure one person affected by leprosy? Such transformation in someone's life for such a relatively small cost. Something that I would really love for you to consider is God calling you to become a regular giver with the Leprosy Mission? Because something as small as £10 a month could find and cure 5 people affected by leprosy, just like Kashi. I was down at a sorry to mention, Church of Ireland conference just over the last few days, and I thought I would go get me and my colleague a cup of coffee and 2 tray bakes to keep us going through the long slog of the day. And those 2 coffees and those 2 tray bakes came to £14.50. And I thought, wow, £10 a month over the course of a year could find and cure 5 people affected by leprosy, and I've just blown 14 of that on 2 coffees and 2 tray bakes. Such transformation for such little cost. So as I finish, I would love to encourage you, like we read in Hebrews, will you keep running this race with us? Will you keep running on this journey with faith and endurance to see this world without leprosy to completion? We read in our Bibles that Jesus had a heart and He so deeply cared for people affected by leprosy. And actually we can be the hands and feet of Jesus today by showing that same love that same compassion to those affected right from our seats here in Moneymore, but actually we can have a global impact and touch the lives of those across the world, in India, in Bangladesh, in Africa, like Nigeria and Tanzania. Will we be led by His Spirit and His following and His example, because we know that Jesus cured leprosy in His lifetime, and we believe that He is calling us to end it in ours. So please do keep running this race. We are so thankful for your support, for your generosity, for your kindness. And I hope and pray that you leave feeling inspired and encouraged by getting a glimpse of the difference that you are making in the lives of those affected by leprosy. Thank you so much.